Hello and welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark, and this handsome devil is Jeff, and we're your history bros. And I feel like we need a tagline right here, Jeff, like your history bros, bringing you, the shortest history topics in 30 minutes.
The name is sort of it tackles a couple of different things. You've all heard your history bro. We decided we're history bro. We'll put the S in there. It tackles a few different things from different angles. So
yeah,
for us,
it's perfect. All right. Well, yeah. So anyway, quick intros before we get into it. This is Jeff, and I'm Mark, and Jeff and I know each other virtually, pretty much never met in person. And how long have we known each other?
A while, as far as Twitter friends and Facebook friends and stuff like that. So, we've known each other a little while, but we've actually never gotten to meet in person. So this is really cool. But I feel like I've known you for forever.
I know, that's what I was trying to think. I don't know, but anyway, we know each other on Twitter. We're dads, and Twitter is really good at kind of connecting people who have commonalities. My dog is hang out there, bud. Stay. Twitter's really good at connecting people with commonalities and bringing us together, and that's how you and I met. I've always been a fan of you, Jeff. Just your posts are hilarious, and just kind of your approach to being a dad is always kind of spot on the way I relate to it. And so I've been a huge fan of you, and this is really cool that I get to do this with you.
And likewise, the way that you handle your family and your kids, I feel like I know your wife too. Your kids, it's really just cool to see. Over the last couple of years, I've gotten to see, your kids get older. You're seeing Henry grow up, so it's just a lot of fun.
It is. It's a good time to live and to be a parent, to have some support from some friends, some virtual friends. But
absolutely.
And you and I have kind of a lot of common, other than just being dads. You and I both grew up in semi-British households, right?
Correct.
You're in the Midwest. I grew up in the Midwest. We like our British cars. You're a Triumph guy, right? I'm an MG guy. Cool,
right. We'll fight that out later.
Yeah, that's another episode. Yeah, I don't know. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. We're both history nerds, which we made that. And I remember distinctly, I saw a picture that you had put on Facebook of your house, and I go, nice background or something. And you go, wow, and well done for knowing that. I saw a B-25 missile up, which I have one as well, sitting in my front room somewhere.
I just got that one, and I gotta get it up. It's on the floor right here against the shelf with a couple of others. I just gotta find a place for it. So,
right, where you can see the helmet in his background. I've got them literally everywhere. We come to this not unarmed completely. We are legitimate nerds.
Yeah, for real.
Literally laying all over the house. So
yeah. Well, cool. Well, all seriousness, excited to be here, Jeff. Thank you. This was your brother. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. And I'm saying that not just to give you credit, but just to make sure, we distribute liability correctly. So, any cease and desist order, and that's, I'm out of
all
here.
Questions can be addressed to Mark Bigley. We'll post his email later on.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about yourself, Jeff, before we get into tonight's topic, or?
Those who are watching this probably know who we are a little bit already. We are first and foremost dads and husbands. I think anybody would say that. We both have a love for history. Having been born in England, having English family yourself and everything like that. We had that commonality. Personally, I'm a published author. My book is for the History Press, part of the Civil War sesquicentennial series. It's on a battle called the Battle of Mine Creek, which is the largest cavalry battle west of the Mississippi. So true nerddom, but it was very flattering to have History Press approach me to do that. And then it's a gas to see your book sitting in a bookstore when you walk into a Barnes and Noble. That's mine.
I bet. That's cool. I'm gonna have to look for it when I'm out there. And then...
I told you I'll just send you a copy of it. So not a worry. I'm a graduate of the University of Kansas, history degree, history, political science, languages. So I'm, the true nerd's nerd.
Cool. I, on the other hand, have no credentials in history, other other than just really digging it. And so I think the cool thing about the way we're going to approach this is we're not just going to be covering stuff that you and I know a lot about. We're going to just really cool history stuff, events and topics that we might not know a lot about and might have to dig into. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's going to make, we hope to make this short, topical, something that's of interest. We're going to be talking about, as we mentioned earlier, about D-Day, and that's in 2 days, I think. Is this the 4th today?
It is. Yep. Yeah. Sunday.
So the anniversary of the Normandy invasions in a couple of days here. So we thought this is a perfect day to launch something about the invasion of Normandy. So
let's do it. And with that, let's launch into it, Matt, because that's a perfect segue. So you and I have talked a couple times this week about D-Day and how we wanted to tackle it. Thought, when people think about D-Day, Saving Private Ryan is kind of, what comes, those images is pretty much what comes to people's mind, and those are pretty accurate from what I've heard. Right there, you go. If you can, there you go.
Correct.
Perfect. But with I think a story that fails to tell is that obviously the U.S. had a huge presence and involvement in D-Day, and were shared a lot of the responsibility in being successful on that day or that week. But there were, 2 other major groups of people that often don't get a lot of love. Or we just kind of, we think of D-Day and we think of Americans storming the beaches in France. But there was 2 other groups of people, 2 other large groups of people, soldiers that were fighting alongside the Americans and storming beaches as well. And those are our friends to the north, the Canadians, and the British across the pond there. And so I kind of wanted to dig in because I knew they were I knew both those groups were a part of D-Day. I didn't really know what each was doing and what their involvement meant for, the objectives and whether or not the day would be successful. So I dug in. I know you dug in, and I just kind of want to spend a couple of minutes on Canada. And I think then I'll hand it off to you, and you can tell us about UK.
Absolutely, and a couple of quick points there too. To set the stage a little bit, there were about 156,000 troops that landed at the beaches of Normandy, and those were divided between the 5 beaches. We all know Omaha and Utah, where Saving Private Ryan, who actually landed at Point du Hoc, the 2nd Rangers, but Gold Sword and Juno beaches were on the eastern flank. We had 2 British beaches, Gold and Sword, and right in the middle was Juno, where the Canadians landed. And so actually the Commonwealth troops, Canada, Britain, actually outnumbered American troops there. I don't know if you realize that. I'm sure Mark realized that. There were about 73,000 U.S. troops. There were about 84,000 British troops and Canadian troops. So
huge. Yeah, I came across that realization this week as well. And here's something that I learned recently about D-Day, not this week. Actually, I did learn a lot about Canadians this week on D-Day, but a couple of years ago when I would think about D-Day, I would envision one huge beach that was split up by 5 groups of people, right? And I knew that each group kind of had like their own part of the beach, but that really isn't the case. These were 5 separate beaches, some of which were miles apart. And they, the countries fought as a whole. UK had their own 2 beaches and Canada had their own beach. I just kind of always pictured it as everybody just kind of mixed in, right?
Everybody kind of going whoop, like a big bulldozer, a big army green bulldozer. But actually, yeah, to your point, everybody had different objectives. When they put Overlord together, everybody said, you know what, British, we need you to take Caen, we need you to take the northern part of the battlefield. America, you've got your own objectives. The airborne beforehand, we're going to send you guys in to clear off the causeways of those beaches so that we can allow those troops then to come in. So yeah, everybody had this job. And to your point, Normandy's huge. I've been to Normandy, and it takes forever to get across this. The British, Sword Beach or Gold Beach rather, and Omaha Beach are a long ways apart. When you really look down to it.
Yeah, that was something new for me. And to your point, everybody had their own objective. Canadians were on Juno Beach, which was right between Sword and Gold. Their objective was really to kind of to connect those 2 dots, right? They were there to clear the way so that the 2 British beaches could, and those, those groups could meet together. And if they weren't successful in doing that, we could have easily lost sword and gold, because they wouldn't have been able to stand just on their own. So
we'll call those Canadians, to our Canadian friends, we'll call them that wedge. They were the wedge, the fullback going in between these two sides here, the right back and left back, trying to clear this field. Absolutely.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's a perfect way to think of it. So some cool facts about Juno and the Canadians. First of all, there's no real cool movies out there. Because I looked on the Canadians and Juno Beach. There is one out there that's called Storming Juno. It's not bad, but it's a little low budget and cheesy. But the end.
So are we, Mark. So are we.
So I guess it fits right in. But
if you're talking low budget and cheesy, so are we. So
here we are. Yeah,
we can star in that movie.
That's right. But at the end, the last 45 minutes is all documentary style, and it's the actual guys. It's a handful of Canadian veterans that were there from different groups, and so that part's really cool. And I think if we want, we could put a link in with that. That was a cool source for me. But a couple cool facts. So to your point, Commonwealth troops, British and Canadians, far outnumbered the American troops on the beaches that day. To carve into that, there was 14,000 Canadians, and the difference about 70 British guys on sword and gold. So 14,000 Canadians. I don't know. I don't think that all of 14,000 of those were assigned to the beaches. That would be, a large portion of them on the beach, another portion airborne coming in on the front end there. But
support troops, supply troops, absolutely. People to clear the beaches, things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And so, and Juno Beach was one of the. It was a pretty heavily. I don't know how it compares to the other beaches, but it was pretty heavily defended. There was 2 German battalions there. There's about 2,000 Germans defending that, and then also a part of a tank division, a Panzer tank division, and one of the more battle-hardened German Panzer divisions that kind of spent the last couple of years in Africa, kind of cutting their teeth. So it was really, really well defended, and this was to be a pretty difficult task for the Canadians, but they were successful. Unfortunately, it did cost about 1,000 Canadian men to do that. And that was their casualty. And when you look at that, that's 7% of 7% of their men they lost on D-Day, on that day, and that's huge, because while they have the smallest number, against the Brits and the Americans, they had the second highest percentage as far as casualty. The Americans were number 1 at 9%. Ish. You might have more details on that. Canadians there at 7%, and the British at around 5 or 6. So kind of interesting to see that they sacrificed heavy. And I don't know if you knew this, but when you look at the footage of the Canadians, or if you look at footage, D-Day footage, you look it up on YouTube or whatever, some of the most common footage that you'll come across, it's the kind of iconic, the landing craft and the door coming down and
right,
guys coming off with all their equipment. There is one that it's probably the one that I'd see the most, and that's actually Canadian troops hitting Juno. They got ladders and they're taking all this equipment. And
the guys with bicycles as well.
I think so. Yeah, it was crazy. Like the
significant amount of bicycle troops, the Canadians and the British. I think it was mostly Canadians that carried the bicycles. As a brilliant innovation for battlefield maneuver, for speed. Because correct me if I'm wrong, too, Mark. They met their objectives faster than anybody else.
I was going right there, faster and farther. Yep, the Canadians, and so they gave up the second most casualties, and they made it the fastest and they made it the farthest on D-Day. So they were pretty bad about it. And to kind of paint a picture of how badass and courageous these guys, I mean, all those guys, doesn't matter where you're from, anybody that was a part of D-Day is, yeah.
That's all to you, brothers.
different breed of people. The Canadians had a projected survival rate of 2 out of 5 hitting the beaches. So, and they still volunteered to do it. I mean,
Are you saying their expected casualties were about 40%?
Yeah, they didn't hit that obviously, but that was what they had projected.
No kidding.
Yeah, 2 out of 5, and that was for your infantry. That was your infantry projected casualty rate, and they still did it. I mean, they were badass about it. I mean, and they're super humble. Like on all these interviews that I saw, I mean, it was just these guys that were like, that's the way. We're always given the hardest jobs, the toughest jobs, kind of always falling on the Canadians, and we just do it. It's our job. We get it done, and we don't complain. We just get out there and do it. It's just yeah. I feel like I got to know the Canadians a little bit better, at least their military mindset. There was another group I just want to cover real quick and then give it back to you so we don't spend too much time. Another group of Canadians that hit the beaches that day, not on foot, but on by tank. And in the very first wave, and I don't know if you've seen, and I remember seeing footage of this before, and I didn't know that they actually tried to go through with it. On that first wave of troops getting tanks to the beach, they couldn't just drive them right off the ships, right? At that point, our ships couldn't be close enough. So they literally floated tanks, across like a half mile of open sea onto the beaches. And when you look at how they did it, it's basically like, one of those, water rings, but around an entire tank, right?
Yeah.
And so they did that. And I remember seeing footage for that, and like, that's gotta be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like that, what you're gonna take the heaviest piece of military equipment and try to float it, across the open sea. But really, what was the alternative? How else were we gonna get them over there? And they needed those tanks on those beaches early on.
Absolutely.
And so they went ahead with it. They retrofitted these tanks with propellers, and then they put these floats around them. And they had a left and right, and just make it to the beach.
D drive, or what do they call it? Duo drive?
Exactly. Yeah.
Percy Hobart, who actually commanded the Commonwealth tank troops. It was the 79th Tank Brigade, British Tank Brigade, but I believe that was his innovation. The Americans adopted it because a lot of them were using American Shermans anyway. Right. And it was just literally a skirt that just pulled up. You couldn't see the tank anymore. Tank was gone. It just looked like these weird skirts, these aquatic sea monsters rolling across the ocean, the top of the ocean. It's tremendous.
It was the most bizarre thing for me to see. But you want to talk about kind of courage and balls of brass. So these guys, the morning of, weather was horrible on D-Day. In fact, I think D-Day was supposed to be the day before. We pushed it off a day.
Yeah, the 4th was D-Day. That's right. They had to push it out today. Yeah, they had to push it out because the airborne, the 6th Airborne, British 6th Airborne, the American, I think it's 82nd 101, took off on the 5th. Yeah, they're supposed to take off the night of the 4th, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. Yeah, but there was bad weather, and it was still pretty ugly the morning of, and so choppy that the captains of the ships that were carrying these tanks were like, it's a no-go. Okay, it's too dangerous. You can't go. And all these tank crews were like, yeah, this is happening. We're doing this regardless. And you give us the order not to, or give us the order to, but we're floating these things off this ship, whether you like it or not. And so eventually the XO, got permission to let these guys do it, but they pretty much said, you're probably not going to make it. Like these waves are going to come crashing over your canvas skirt, and you're going to sink to the channel, like a rock. Sink to the bottom of the channel, and but they did it anyway, and most of them sank to the bottom of the channel. I mean, there was one guy that was being interviewed, and he was on a tank crew. There was just 6 tanks on his ship, and they all kind of went out, and he watched one by one 5 of those 6 tanks, all 5 but his, sink. And take all the men. That was, I think it's 5 men per tank, so 25 men, just right there. Gone. And they knew that was, they knew their chances. They knew that this was very likely, but they knew how desperately they were needed on those beaches, and they just said, we're going, we're doing it. So
effectively a suicide mission. They were well aware that this is a suicide mission.
pretty much, and they fought the command to be able to do it, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And those guys that are still around and doing interviews, just yeah, incredible people. So anyway, that's just kind of some random cool little tidbits about the Canadians, and how badass they are. So they're, we always think of them as just kind of being our friendly neighbors to the north, and they are, like, they're the
Hockey and poutine, baby. Hockey, poutine, and now tanks. Now floating tanks and shock troops, right in between, a wedge between the two British beaches.
That's it. They have a new brand. They're our friendly neighbors to the north. So Canada, thank you. The world thanks you. We love you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mark, Scotch and Rocks is his name, I believe. One of my good friends, Twitter friends. This is for you, buddy. Your Maple Leaf loving self. So thanks to your forebears there, certainly. And anything else on the Canadians there?
That's kind of all I've got for now. Yeah.
Yeah, and just in the name of keeping it short and everything, Mark speaks. That was brilliant. I mean, that's exactly right. I think the big piece that I take away is the bravery of these guys. They knew what they were doing when they hit Normandy, and this wasn't just the U.S. 1st Infantry Division or 4th Infantry Division. This was all across. To our point, originally around roughly 156,000 troops. I wrote down the numbers here. These are rough estimates. Like he said, about 14,000 Canadian shock troops that hit the beach, about 50,000 British shock troops that hit the beach. These guys, they didn't know where they were coming back. They just know they needed to do this. They'd already seen a failure with that raid a couple of years before that. But from a casualty standpoint, I think that was great. Who saw the most casualties was actually the airborne. They really took it hard. The British Airborne. What we saw, right? Band of brothers with the airborne troops that landed. The 101st, the Screaming Eagles, easy company. Well, there was a British 6th Airborne Division, which actually was the first unit that set feet in Normandy. And Ouistreham was the British 6th Airborne, and
right?
Really cool thing. The first, and his name was Den Brotheridge, was the first man killed. He was a lieutenant in this unit that was their whole goal was to go take a couple of bridges, Pegasus Bridge, which you may have seen or read the books. But their whole goal was to go take these bridges with a very small group and hold off these German tanks. So yeah, Den Brotheridge was the first guy that actually, I mean, anecdotally, can anybody really prove that? Most probably the first guy that died. They hit the ground not just a little after midnight in gliders, these Horsa gliders, and crashed these things. You've seen these, and talk about balls as big as church bells. These guys were. But these British troops, it's about 6,000 of them, and they suffered about 1,500 casualties. So a significant amount of casualties there. Whereas on Golden Sword, you saw gold 400 roughly, 630 on sword. So much smaller casualties compared to your Canadian brethren. I mean, from a percentage, maybe 5% or so. That's that showed what those troops at Juno were up against. The Golden Sword, they also faced tremendous opposition as well from the Germans. There were tankers. They had trouble taking Caen. Americans are always thinking about Monty being a wimp and not taking Caen. Well, Bernard Montgomery, the commander of the ground forces at Normandy, he came from a position of not wanting to do anything unless he had, if not numerical superiority, at least tactical superiority. So when he hit Caen, which is this, if you've been to Caen, it's this hole. I mean, it's this very densely packed city, full of tanks, full of Panzerfaust, full of troops. Yeah, and he probably looked at that and said, I'm going to wait a little bit. I think that's probably, I think we should, let's wait until we have good tactical superiority before we take that on, and maybe not destroy that part. Another couple of cool thing I found too, speaking of contributions from the Commonwealth side, there were roughly 7,000 surface vessels that took place in the invasion. 7,000.
Right there in the sea, and off those beaches. Isn't that crazy?
It's nuts. 80% were British ships.
I did not know. I guess that makes sense. coming right from the channel.
80% were British ships. There were from the Air Forces, there were flyers from New Zealand, Kelly, there you go, Australia, the rest of these, the Commonwealth nations that took part in this invasion. This was a very holistic, total war sort of invasion. But yeah, the Golden Sword, you know, you had on gold, it was the 50th Division, the Northumbria Division. You had the East Yorks, the Greens, Howards, the Durham Light Infantries, the Devonshires, the Dorsetshires, the Hampshires, the Devonshires, several of these big old famous regiments foot, they were originally called, that took place at Gold. The British, this is the 3rd Division, which was Monty's own. Monty was formerly the commander of the British 3rd Division, so he obviously wanted his 3rd. The 1st Battalion, Suffolk, that's where I'm from, the Suffolk, so famous regiment, the Suffolk Battalion, the Suffolk Regiment. The 1st Suffolks, the East York, South Lancs, the Lincolnshires, the Cosbys, that's the King's Own Scottish Borderers, the Royal Ulster Rifles, that's your Irish, your troops, a whole litany of troops. So this wasn't just an American operation. It was far from it. Part and parcel of what happened and what the success of Normandy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. Would you agree? And this is where we may box a little bit, but I don't think so. The reason Normandy was successful, yes, was the boots on the ground, the guys that braved this hellfire to land in Normandy. But what happened behind the scenes and what happened leading up to it? You know, the breaking the codes at Bletchley Park, the planning, the trickery, the landing, finding a dead guy basically in the streets of London, giving him a briefcase and letting him float onto Spanish Beach. And
that's another episode in itself, by the way.
Oh, clear. Isn't that a great story? And we will conquer that one, I promise you. But all of this took place from Britain. Britain was a fortress. It was literally a fortress of 2 million service and support people on this little island. It was bursting with weaponry, guns, tanks, and I think that's what makes it cool. And when you look at it from a holistic and really from that Commonwealth side, is sort of that piece. Also, there's something too, Mark. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is the Free French troops? There was it the 177 Free French commandos that landed at Normandy? We can't forget our French.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know what beach they were on, but yeah, there was, you know, a small contingent of you know, French commandos that do that. Yeah, but I don't know where.
Absolutely. Here's some interesting. I like to throw little goofy tidbits in here. There was a pub test. This was. I had to pull up my notes. Terence Otway, who was a high-ranking British officer. This was one of my favorite stories of the entire operation, and it spoke to the secrecy and spoke to the seriousness with which these guys took it. To your point, you know, these secrets didn't get out, but he took 30 of the prettiest members of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. This is the RAF, Women's Auxiliary Air Force. They dressed them in civilian clothes, these beautiful girls.
I still like where this is going. I'm listening.
I know, you like these beautiful British girls. They dumped them into pubs locally around where the troops were leading up to the day. They were asked to do anything to discuss, within reason. Well, I mean, we can use our imagination certainly, but they were asked to find any information that you can from these soldiers and find out, you know, can you get any information from them? Not one piece of information. Not one of these force got any sensitive information from these British troops, these American troops or whatever that they were doing in these local pubs. I thought that was a really cool little piece.
That's I didn't know that they did that. Yeah, I don't know. See, it's a different breed. I don't know how long I would have been able to hold out.
God love him. There's no chance I would have been able to do that. But it speaks to, you know, a lot of the subterfuge, I guess the spy game. The British play it better than anyone else in the world. I mean, it Frankly, that's it. It was an amazing operation from back. What I think the whole piece is that we want to tie in the fact that all these troops, these 156,000 troops, the vast majority of them were actually, or not vast majority, but the majority were Commonwealth troops. These brave Canadians, these brave British boys that landed here alongside the Americans, met their objectives, and fought into Fortress Europe is kind of what we want to do, and salute these guys on D-Day.
Yeah, cool, good stuff. All right, so that's D-Day. That's hitting our buddies across the pond and our friends to the north, giving them
save us some poutine, friends to the north. Save us some poutine.
Please do. All right, so Jeff, tell us what are we talking about next week?
You know, we're gonna next week. This is our first podcast, so we're starting to kind of feel our style, and I think we're kind of feeling. And I felt like this was just.
Oh, I feel it, Jeff. I feel
What's
it.
that? I feel it. You're a sexy man. I mean, let's be honest. But it's, you know, what we hope to do again is to do these things to make it interesting, relevant, and interesting to you guys, not just us. But next week, I think we're going to tackle Tudor Britain. Dispel a couple of myths, talk about really what life was like in Tudor Britain. This is another area that this is kind of my area. D-Day is more his area. World War II is, I defer everything to this guy. But Tudor Britain's one of mine where I really say this is, there's a lot of relevance. You've all seen, you know, things about Henry VIII. So we're going to talk a little bit about Henry VIII and what a decent king he was and what a absolute homicidal bastard he was as well, probably.
I can't wait. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. And I don't get, are we able to put something across?
You know, we'll try to put something on here, but I'm kind of the armadillo on the information superhighway. So, but we're going to link this on Twitter. You'll see things. We're going to put this on YouTube, so you'll be able to access it there as well, in case you miss it or just want to watch it multiple times. And I wouldn't blame you, frankly, if you did.
There we go. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Mark, see you later, buddy.
All right, Jeff, take care, man.